Good afternoon, Georgetown. Well, isn't it a wonderful and lovely serendipity to stand on this stage that bears my last name? Good afternoon. I am the son of an immigrant. I am an educator, a theologian, and social ethicist. My father migrated to the United States from the beautiful Caribbean island of St. Lucia. My mother is a public educator, and my father is a high school dropout who migrated to the United States to provide a better quality of life for himself and for his family. You see, I come from a family where it's easy to find despair and often difficult to find hope. I come from a community where it's marred with violence and often have family members who become victim to the criminal justice system. At a very early age, my parents taught me the value of education. They said education is the bridge to the future and the cornerstone by which our success so heavily depends upon. And in the next breath, my mother would say that success is not always final. But she said, son, failure is not always fatal. Those words are the words of my parents, and every day I live by those words. I have some questions that I would like to ask you today. Have you ever had a teacher to give up on you? By a show of hands, won't you raise your hand? Have you ever had someone that did not believe in your potential? Raise your hand. And have you ever had someone that doubted you and did not want to see you succeed? Ladies and gentlemen, if there's anybody that understands what it means to face adversity, are black boys. In our society, black boys are more likely than any other group to fall victim to our educational system where it fails them. 80% of our classrooms are filled with black boys in special education. 2/3 of all suspensions nationwide are black boys. Black boys are often taught to have a deflated sense of self and are taught early not to dream big. I recall when I was in 4th grade, my teacher said to me, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" And I said, "I would like to be a lawyer." And she looked at me and she chuckled violently and said, "Why not a basketball player?" She doubted me. She said, "You'll never make the grades high enough to go to college, let alone become somebody's attorney." And to add insult to injury, she kept me back in the 4th grade, enrolled me in special education classes, and enabled me as having a learning deficiency. Those words stuck with me, but instead of allowing them to germinate, I decided that I was going to use her words as ammunition to fight against the grain. By the time I was in 5th grade and 6th grade, I was making straight A's, and I managed to lobby the school principal to move me to my correct grade. Now that might sound like a big thing. For me, it was. I come to tell you that I moved on to high school, managed to make great grades in high school, graduating as senior class president and prom king. But then, during my exit interview counseling with my guidance counselor, she asked a question. "Herron, what do you want to be when you grow up?" And I said, "A lawyer." And she looked at me and she says, "Why not trade school or a comedian?" I decided that I was still going to apply to school, so I said to her, "I've applied to college." And she looked at me and she says, "Don't apply to any Ivy League institutions. You don't have a snowball chance in hell of getting in." And for a moment, doubt crept in, and I believed her. So I opted to apply to state schools instead. And while at the illustrious Florida A&M University, I graduated in 2.5 years in my political science program, being one of the first students to do so in modern history. My education didn't stop there. I went on to earn a Master of Public Administration, beefing up my resume in hopes of going to an Ivy League institution, and to reject as false the notion or idea that I had to live into the box that others had created for me. Subsequently, in 2010, I applied to Yale University, and I was admitted to the master's program with the hopes of eventually ending my college career with a law degree. 2010, ladies and gentlemen, was a very defining moment for me. It was truly when the rubber truly hit the road, and I experienced one of the greatest setbacks in all of my life. That horrific episode still haunts me today. My first semester at Yale, I was brought up on charges after working for a college reach-out program in Florida. I was falsely accused of sexual assault. Subsequently, I was arrested. On November 10th, 2010, I dreadfully recall the United States Marshals coming into the classroom, arresting me in the presence of my peers, escorted me off of the campus belligerently, and thrown into the New Haven jail. You see, all too often I've experienced the ease with which young black men who look like me fall under the crushing yoke of injustice by a prejudicial and racist criminal justice system. And while I was in the jail, to add insult to injury, I received a hand-delivered letter from one of the administrators at the school indicating that you've been dismissed from the institution. As you can imagine, I was bewildered, befuddled, and perplexed. I felt that my case was being adjudicated in the court of public opinion. And far too often we see in our society that black men are not given the benefit of the doubt, that they're guilty unto proven innocent. And even when they're proven innocent, there's a cloud of suspicion that surrounds them. So I stayed in the New Haven jail for approximately several weeks. And while there, I was further victimized and abused by those who were in charge of my safety, and was also taken advantage of by my fellow inmates. I lost 60 pounds over a course of a couple of days. I felt sad. I felt hurt. I felt condemned. At the same time, I lost my grandmother. I lost my grandfather. I lost my job. I lost my apartment. I lost my car. I was essentially rendered homeless and a victim to the system. After I was extradited from New Haven to Florida, I was moved into the custody of my parents. They bonded me out with $50,000 of their own personal money that they had saved up. They went into their retirement. My dad, who was a cancer survivor, went into his 401k because he believed in my ability and he wanted to see his son come out of the grueling judicial system. Ladies and gentlemen, you're looking at somebody who's a living, walking testimony to tell you that the words of my mother rang true, that when knocked down, to get back up and to keep swinging harder. For I learned that nothing is stronger than a wounded person who is ferociously determined not to give up and to give in. I decided that once my case was decided and my charges were dismissed, that I was going to go with every fiber of my being, that I was going to go with the tenacity of a bulldog and knock back on Yale's door. I decided to re-knock on Yale's door. And Yale decided to allow me to come back. When I went back to the school, I had a relentless thirst and a righteous vengeance to go back in and to complete what it is that I started. Because I believe that none of us have gotten to where we are solely about what we've done, but somebody had to bend down, pick us up, create an opportunity, and create a door. I graduated from Yale with 2 master's degrees. And the following year, I graduated from Andover Newton Seminary with a doctorate degree. And while I'm excited about the work that we've done at Yale, the fight still didn't end. The collateral damage of what was on the internet was a digital footprint. Everybody chose to write about the story because I was a decorated student. It made every newspaper and every television station that you could imagine. And one by one, I fought 23 different editors-in-chiefs and made them take down the defamatory articles offline. I come to tell you that what looks like it's impossible can be made possible. For the words of my mother just kept coming back to me. Son, that when you're knocked down, to get back up and to keep swinging harder. So what I want to say is that everybody in here, there's nobody that's given the same fingerprint as you. There's nobody that's given the same footprint as you. That means that that's something special for you to do that nobody else can do quite like you. That there is a warrior in you. That there is a fighter in you. That there's a victor in you. And you will never know who you are if you allow others to define you by your circumstances. I did not allow this situation to handicap me. For the words of Delatoria McNeil just kept coming back in my mind. He said, don't let the people, the problems, and pain of your past pause your presence, punish your person, prison your potential, or paralyze your progress. And while many of you might be excited about the story to which I just shared in terms of my redemption, I come to say that my story is an American story. My story is a story that resonates strongly in the urban centers of America, in the ghetto, in the trenches, in the boroughs, where every day this is a lived reality for so many in our country. And so I will leave you with this challenge. My grandmother would share this old proverb with me, and she says, son, every day in Africa, a lion wakes up and realizes that he must run faster than the fastest gazelle to survive, or he will go without food. And every day in Africa, a gazelle wakes up and realizes that he must run faster than the fastest lion, or he will go without food. She says, but whether you are a lion or a gazelle, when the sun comes up, you better be running. I want to give you a charge today. Run to end mass incarceration. Run to end prison reform in our country. Run so that that black boy, a black girl, a colored boy, a colored girl might have an opportunity at a decent shot in our educational system. And unlike me, they won't be labeled at risk, and they won't be labeled with an educational deficiency, and that they too might experience the American dream. Thank you, and thank you very much.